Good Monday morning, everybody. Once Upon a Pandemic is the beautiful new book inspired by the strength and resilience of parents-to-be during the pandemic. Dr. Sheila is joining us to tell us more and to share tips for parents out there who are expecting during this extra difficult time. Good morning, Dr. Sheila. How are you?
Good morning, Dina. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk about parents right now. You know, usually, and it is the most beautiful news. It's a blessing. It's a miracle. But there's this added layer of stress right now. What are you hearing from parents?
Absolutely. So, at the best of times, becoming a new family and a new parent is challenging. But during a pandemic, we know that this is incredibly difficult because the normal resources that we have, the connections that we usually make during this time are not as readily available to us. Yeah. And so for that reason, we started an Instagram account called the Pandemic Pregnancy Guide to help support families during this time, to help guide them through this information overload and just to give them some guidance.
Good for you. And it's interesting because I know my mom, she described having us in the 70s and how it was such an isolating experience. Sometimes they'd strap you down. You were left alone and the husband was waiting outside with a cigar. A lot of people are feeling that isolation now because of COVID measures. So what can they expect once in the delivery room?
It's different depending on where you live. In Toronto, there are different rules. So I recommend check with your healthcare provider, your midwife, your OB, or your family doctor to see what the rules are at your individual hospital. There may be, generally right now, it's only one support person in the room with you at a time. In the past, we were able to bring in more. Depending on if you have a fever, if you're COVID positive or a positive contact, sometimes we are recommending masking during labor too, which feels very unimaginable, but something that may happen as well, which is why we really recommend prior to delivery to make sure that you are making sure you're being safe, following public health guidelines to minimize the risk of actual exposure prior to as well.
Let's talk about the book, Once Upon a Pandemic, and what was the catalyst for this? I know you have a little one. You were just telling me during the break, 18 months. That's amazing.
18 months, yeah.
So what started the idea for this book?
So as I mentioned, my colleagues and I over at St. Mike's Hospital, we started an Instagram account called the Pandemic Pregnancy Guide. And we thought we'd have 100 followers maybe. And now we have 23,000 followers.
What? Oh
and
my gosh.
It's been incredible. It's a Canadian-based, evidence-based, up-to-date resource for people. And when we started it, the questions were coming in from everybody, from Ontario, from around the world, around the fears around what's a delivery room, what will I have to push with a mask? Yeah. What's that going to be like for me? And it was a lot of fear, but I wanted to document this past year for people because sometimes when you're in it, you don't see how strong you are and how resilient you've been. And I wanted to create something called Once Upon a Pandemic. This is the book. I have it here actually in one of our sample copies, to be able to give people a time capsule specifically of this time to remember them as a time of, we were really strong. Yeah. We were able to get through this time in a way that brought us to you. And it's an opportunity for families to be able to read this to their children as they get older. And during the pre-sale time, what we've done is also actually do 100% of the proceeds are going towards the Red Door shelter here in Toronto. Within a week, we sold over 900 copies. So we have over $5,000 going towards the shelter because we know that during the pandemic, families are struggling. And so we wanted to be able to support families during this time, not only in our community, but to everybody who may be struggling during this time. So if people are interested, they can get it at onceuponapandemic.ca. And it's an opportunity. It's really beautiful. I had an illustrator from Italy who was just incredible, Dina, and I loved working with her. It's meant to be something beautiful that people can hold on to and remember this time, not only from fear, but of hope and love.
Good for you. That's the beautiful message and perfect way to leave this interview. Hope and love. Dr. Sheila, for more information, we will head on over. You mentioned, what's the best way? Website or Instagram? I guess all of them.
So the website is www.onceuponapandemic.ca for information about pregnancy. And we'll be hosting a mental health night tonight on the Pandemic Pregnancy Guide as well, because it's a difficult time. So lots of opportunities to get information from both of those sites.
Shout out to our warriors here. By the way, our producer, Roshni Murthy, is on mat leave for her little one. And Stella Quisto had her little baby girl. To all the parents out there, you're warriors, that's for sure, especially during these times. Thank you for this beautiful book and message, Dr. Sheila. Love to you. Stay safe.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice
Coming
to
up,
meet you.
friends, it's another week of the Level Up Challenge. This is what we all need to get our mind off stuff, yeah? Do things that are good for us. If you're ready, Nicole's serving it up right after this and celebrating her birthday.